The Elder Scrolls III Morrowind is widely regarded online as the last true RPG from the Elder Scrolls series. And for good reason. It's one of the most technically impressive RPGs from the early 2000s, pushing the boundaries of what a Western action RPG could be. And even in the modern era, it still holds up. At least to me, it still holds up. A lot of people might actually argue against that, and that's really the topic of this video. Now, does that mean Morrowind is the perfect game with no flaws, and that its successors are terrible Bethesda slop? No. Todd Howard says as he slides a copy of Skyrim Remaster on Unreal 5 across the table, with a slight grin on his face, knowing that you're probably going to buy it. Skyrim and Oblivion are both really good games in their own right, and if you tried to argue otherwise, I'd assume that either the nurses at your retirement home are looking for you, or you are a contrarian Zoomer who watched that one patrician TV video and has never actually played Morrowind. Or I guess there's a third option and you've never played an Elder Scrolls video game, which, okay, why are you even watching this video? The point I'm trying to make is Morrowind is different from other Elder Scrolls games, at least the newer ones. It's not like Oblivion or Skyrim. Like most RPGs released in the West, as time has gone on, they tend to lose more and more of what makes them an RPG in the first place. Take Skyrim, for example. Sure, it has a leveling system, but so does Fallout Brotherhood of Steel, and that definitely isn't an RPG. Skyrim is a game where you can be literally anything and everything in a single playthrough. Every guild leader, every playstyle, every Daedric champion. And from a gameplay perspective, that's pretty neat. But from a role-playing perspective, it's ass. In fact, in recent years, I've debated with myself on whether or not Skyrim is even an RPG, at least in the traditional sense. To define what a true RPG is can be difficult too, because it's a vague term that describes mechanics that can be portrayed in a wide variety of ways. But there are a few key pillars. Your character makes decisions, and those decisions affect their relationships with people and factions. The world responds to who you are and what you do, and your character has limits, classes, skills, weaknesses, that force you to commit into a role instead of sampling every possible thing. But I've also seen people online try and argue that Red Dead Redemption 2 is an RPG because if you eat too many peaches, you get fat. So I don't even know if the argument on what an RPG and what isn't an RPG even matters anymore. However, Morrowind, for the most part, operates within the parameters I have set. Hell, it even uses a dice roll system for combat, which is literally a carryover from tabletop RPGs like Dungeons & Dragons, which was the inspiration for CRPGs like Ultima Underworld, which would go on to inspire Bethesda to make Arena, and yeah. That's a lot of yapping that nobody cares about. Though you should care, because D&D is like the direct lifeblood DNA for things like Skyrim. But it doesn't stop there. Morrowind's world is narratively rich and internally consistent. Even with its clunky mechanics and dated presentation, it's easy to become immersed simply by engaging with the people of Vardenfell, learning who they are, what they believe, and how they fit into the world, and its politics is grand and intoxicating for immersion. A lot more so than any cinematic kill cam could ever achieve. But ever since Skyrim Special Edition released back in 2016, wait, the first Skyrim re-release was almost 10 years ago. Fuck, that's crazy. Fans have been excited about shining a new light on some of these older fossils of a video game. Oblivion would go on to get the Unreal 5 treatment, and for all the hate that it gets, I think it's a good time. If you don't like it, I don't care. My opinion matters more than yours because I own like 5 copies of Oblivion on the Xbox 360, so checkmate, nerd. So inevitably that raises the question, does Morrowind need a remaster? No doubt it would be a massive undertaking. The game has basically zero voice acting and a library's worth of text. And I recently came across an IGN article covering an interview with Bruce Nesmith, a guy who worked for Bethesda for almost 20 years, and he had some things to say about why a Morrowind remaster might not work. And while Nesmith brings up some interesting points, I think there are a few things he's just straight up wrong about, and I want to talk about that. On the topic of Morrowind Remastered, the problem with doing playing Morrowind is that I bet they don't even have the original code, Nesmith said. The game is so old, I don't know if the original source code still exists anymore. If it does, can you even compile it? When you're looking at Oblivion, they still had the code. They could still compile it. Putting the code into the new version of the engine was a possibility. The other thing I would say is go back and play Morrowind and tell me that's a game you want to play again. We all have these fond memories of things that were pivotal moments in our gaming fantasy histories that we absolutely love, but you go back and play a 20-year-old game and you will cringe. People even had cringe moments with the Oblivion remaster, but they forgave it because they're reliving something special. They're enjoying the nostalgia. I worked on Oblivion. I'm responsible for some of those cringe moments, but the further you go back, the more that's going to be an issue. The reality of playing Morrowind is that it doesn't stand the test of time, in my opinion. Now, if you were to completely remake Morrowind with the Skyrim engine to try and rebuild it from the ground up, that's a whole other story. But that's an entire project. That's a whole 4-year development cycle. Why not go and make something new? I'm going to skip over the source code argument because I doubt that Bethesda has lost Morrowind's source code. That just doesn't make sense. Todd Howard has been there since Morrowind, so I think that they probably still have it. And I'm going to focus more on the cringe moments of playing Morrowind, or the alleged cringe moments of playing Morrowind. And honestly, I think it's the complete opposite. It's not cringe to play Morrowind. It's based in epic. You can go onto YouTube right now and find dozens of videos titled, "I tried Morrowind for the first time in X year." And almost every single one ends the same way. The person loved Morrowind, and they bravely state that it's the greatest RPG of all time, and the best Elder Scrolls, and how we should go back to 2002 and hold Todd Howard at gunpoint and tell him to make Morrowind 2. And sure, some of those videos are probably performative, just validating what the audience already believes, but by far and large, people who genuinely give Morrowind a real shot come out on the other side enjoying it. Remastering it would only give more people an excuse to finally engage with a classic. There are learning curves to get over. You actually have to specialize your character. Combat can feel rough at first, but these are small hurdles that could be tweaked slightly to make the game more inviting without destroying what makes it special. And before any of the Morrowind elitists come out of the woodworks to argue that changing anything about the game would ruin its sacred purity of the game, shut up. No one cares what you have to say. Go back to the little hole where you little freaks like to congregate. That being said, there is an obvious compromise here. There could be 2 combat options in the setting, a modernized combat mode and a classic combat mode for the people who want the original experience untouched, and everybody wins. Morrowind was never even about the combat in the first place. It's more about the world and the characters within that world. So I don't even know, like, the combat is largely a non-point when talking about Morrowind, other than the fact that the combat sucks. But that kind of leads to the real question at hand. Should Bethesda actually allocate a budget to a Morrowind remaster? Financially, I think a remaster would do very well. One of the biggest money sinks would be fully voice acting the game's massive amount of dialogue, but realistically, modern technology already has a solution for that. And I'm going to get some boos for this, but they would probably just use AI to voice act the game. I know AI is a touchy subject, but for a project like this, it's probably the only way that it works at scale. With enough care, oversight, and restraint, AI-assisted voice acting could land surprisingly close to a Skyrim-level dialogue without requiring an impossible casting and recording process. That said, even with those efficiencies, a Morrowind remaster would still pull time, money, and talent away from other projects like a new Elder Scrolls or a new Fallout. And that's always the argument against remasters, especially ones that don't technically need them. And I get it, it's not always wise to ask for old shit when you're not getting new shit, but the new shit, Elder Scrolls 6 for example, will never be an experience like Morrowind. It will be a streamlined, modern, broadly appealing, and heavily action-focused video game. And that's fine. Like I said earlier, Skyrim is absolutely goated. But I do think it's important that players have the option to go back and have something that is accessible, that is something more pure, something closer to that tabletop pen and paper RPG. And hell, let's say that we did get a remaster of Morrowind and enough people get the chance to actually play Morrowind, maybe we'd even see a shift in what the audience starts demanding again. Maybe people will say, hey, we want more games like Morrowind. Because contrary to popular belief, and this is going to be a hard pill to swallow for some of you, most people do not want like Morrowind RPGs because they're just too hard to get into. They're not streamlined. They're not modernized. Most gamers don't want to spend the time that it takes to understand a game like Morrowind. And that's why we'll never get another game like Morrowind unless if it's a Morrowind remaster, because Bethesda obviously is a company that wants to make as much money as possible. They want to make games that are as broadly appealing as possible while still servicing their like core Elder Scrolls audience. But I don't know. Do you think we need a Morrowind remaster? Tell me in the comment section down below. I'm interested to see what you guys have to say. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace. Like, comment, subscribe. Deuces.